The Utah Debate Commission held a series of debates across Utah for the various federal races. Despite the growth of third parties over the past 6 years, the Utah Debate Commission decided only Democrats and Republicans would be heard. On September 25th in Cedar City, a debate for Congressional District 2 was held. Afterwards, several other parties gave their answers to the debate questions. This is Wayne Hill, running with the Independent American Party for the 2nd Congressional District in Utah. Here are his answers.
It's a horrible thing, actually. Common Core was invented to mainly make it so our children did what the government wanted, instead of being able to have the children do what the parents need. They can actually control the parents and the children through the parents, or the children through the parents through the children. And so Common Core was set up to dictate what they do, and I've heard what they say, and the president starts out most of the Common Core with it, and he's the one that edits it and does the thing to it. So Common Core is definitely an evil thing in my way of looking at it. Well, the multi-use of federal land should be held out for the private person. And basically what's happened down here in Nevada, where the people had a 100-year lease, and the federal government has come in and wiped those people out, literally wiped them out. There's one left. He stood up for the Constitution, his constitutional rights, and they're working definitely to get rid of him. That's not the way this was set up. People should have some rights. I think that our government is actually taking those things away in many ways, but they've taken away the horses, they've taken away the cattle, and they've taken away, because of a turtle or something else, they've made it look like they've got to come in and save the land, and they're actually destroying it. Let the private sector do it. Utah chose, and whether you like it or not, it shouldn't be done by one person, a judge saying that it doesn't mean anything. The people actually chose and voted for it. It's when I moved to Provo, the people voted 40-something% to let the hospital be nonprofit, and 55 said they should not be nonprofit, and yet the commissioners made them nonprofit. So because they had to have one of the commissioners was on their chairman of their board. That's not the way it's supposed to be. People should be able to choose, and if they vote, and it's just like Proposition 8, they flat out denied what the people said 3 times, and a judge turns it over. That's not the way the Constitution was set up. That's not exactly at all the way the Constitution was set up. The biggest problem is we have a bunch of people, Republicans and Democrats, that want to use immigration. They don't want to build the fence. Bush wouldn't build the fence. He had the money. He wouldn't do it because he wanted to use those illegals for voting base. The Democrats obviously want that. They're both the same party. I make no bones about it. There is no difference. They'll say, one's more evil than the other. There's no difference between them. They should build the fence. I just talked to a lady today who is from Canada, and she's flat out been trying for years to become a citizen. And every time she has to get a new attorney, she's had 9 attorneys to become a citizen of the U.S. from Canada. And here we let those people come in here and rip our basic economic status, everything away. And all we had to do was build a fence. Why didn't they do it? The Independent American Party, I proudly tell you, I'm one of the co-founders of it. We started it several years ago in an effort to save the Constitution from the two-party system. That Washington, Madison, and others said never let there be two major parties, because they'll destroy America. That's one of their biggest fears, they said. Let me tell you, they destroyed America, and they haven't tried to even look like they're trying to do anything for the Constitution. Even tonight, I talked to the congressman's head chief of staff, and I says, can you name me one thing they've done? Because I can tell you, sir, that there has 20,000 gun laws out of the million new laws that your Republicans and Democrats have created. I can tell you there's 20,000 of them are gun laws. How many have destroyed the First Amendment? Maybe 100,000? I don't know, out of the million. I'm just asking him for one, and he said he will find it. I said, you'll be the first one if that's the case. You'll be absolutely the first one that can find that. The Constitution is basically hanging by a thread because we have two parties that don't give a damn about what in the crud happens to it. Well, I'll tell you, when you're in debt, 17, 20 trillion, and you have a real debt of unfunded debts, and unfunded liabilities, which could be up into 200 trillion by now, I don't think our kids have a chance. And I have people say, well, my grandkids are going to be broke and they're going to be wiped out with what's going on. I say, let me tell you, if we make it past this election with all the evil and the things that are going on, I'll be amazed, because all they have to do, and they're all corrupt, and that sounds crazy, but the reality is, I think you can prove that easily, that if they're all doing the same thing to cover what they're doing wrong, and then we're in deep trouble. And all he has to do is declare martial law. And has Congress from either side stopped him from doing anything? No. They don't want that, because that would make them look bad, because they've covered him for all these years. And they've covered Bush, they covered the presidents before. And that's the way life is. So our kids, I don't know if our kids have a chance. I don't know if we have a chance if we don't stop them, at least in this election. Well, I listened to the debates with Ron Paul, and Ron said in his debates against the other three Republicans, he said that we are in 940 bases illegally. The reason he said that is because we can't be in a war or in different places without Congress's approval. He said we were in 940 bases around the world on the presidents. That's Republican, Democrat presidents, not because Congress put us there. That's the real reality of what is going on back there. Foreign wars, we're giving money to people that are turning their guns on us. We're giving them billions of dollars. And I love it when Bernanke went to Congress, and he didn't have to go to Congress because he has nothing to do with this country. And the Federal Reserve was started by both parties. That's the ridiculous thing about it, is both parties started the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a Ponzi scheme that has nothing to do with our country. And Bernanke went to him and asked for another $2 trillion. This is after Obama got in. He says, I need another $2 trillion. Did he have to do that? No, he didn't have to ask Congress. He can print it himself. They gave him that right on Jekyll Island. And so here he is, he's sitting there and he's saying, I need another $1 trillion. One congressman, not Ron Paul from Texas, but one congressman from Texas says, Mr. Bernanke, can you tell us what you did with the last $2 trillion we gave you? And he says, yeah, I gave it to the banks. Mr. Bernanke, can you tell us which banks? He said, no. Does that sound like a good employee of yours that would tell you no and not go on? Well, the reason he didn't, because Ron Paul got a partial audit, and it showed that that our government he had given 60% of that $2 trillion to Syrian, Libyan, and Arabian banks. And he had given 40% to American banks. But he wouldn't let us use it. But he let us pay the interest on all of it. We don't get any of it, but we paid the interest. That's how the Ponzi scheme works, folks. Well, you know, I think that the reality is that after Obama got reincarnated, I call it, reelected, whatever, the first thing he did the next day was he went and signed the Small Arms Treaty with the UN. Nice thing to do the day after. The next day he went and closed down 200 natural gas or gas coal companies, and basically did away with those things. If we was to use the natural sources we have here, just the ones we're used to, we wouldn't have to have foreign oil, we wouldn't have to have any of that. In Utah alone, we have enough to supply us. And it's all over the place. But we don't do that because that doesn't make us dependent upon foreign companies and foreign entities. That's an easy thing. I think the first thing you have to do is quit spending like a drunken sailor, and Ronald Reagan said that, and he says, but I hate to badmouth drunken sailors. So basically, because the Congress is worse than that, they have no respect for money. They don't give a darn about anything, obviously, I can see. And so how I would curtail that is I would do what this guy who started privatization, actually a for-profit company called Privatization. He actually went in and took a library from a city, and the mayor said, oh, nobody can do that, cheaper than lose $5 or $6 million a year. And this guy took their library and actually made a profit and didn't take one penny from the taxpayers, hired more librarians. Then he went to and I heard on the deal tonight, they talked about the forest and how you could do the federal government should own all the rangers and everything. Basically, this guy took a place like Zion's Park, and he went in there, and they were losing millions a year. He didn't take one tax dollar, and he made money, and he hired more forest rangers. That's what privatization could do. The government sits up there. I went to a debate the other night in St. George. They said, the Democrat says the federal government can do everything better than the people and the states. And the Republicans got up there and they said, no, we can do everything in the state better than the feds. And then we had our candidate who said at the end, she said, what's wrong with the people doing it? That's the thing. The Independent American Party and candidate for state legislature said that we should let we the people do it and privatize things so that they can absolutely ourselves and make a profit. Federal government's never going to cut the post office out because they lose $5.5 billion a year. Do you think they're going to say, that's a great idea, let's let privatization do it and not lose any money? Then they have a lot less voter base. So it's just like the illegals coming across. It's all about voter base. So there was 20 million government employees, probably 19 million of them too many. Well, I've ran, this is my third time running for Congress, never as a party. This is the first time as a real party. And basically, I ran in Ogden. I was raised in Ogden. I ran in Provo, and I have a house in Provo. And I live in St. George now, and I believe I'm kind of covered everything. I was raised on a little farm. I think you have to make things equitable for everybody. You can't just get your base from the big guys who have the money and leave the little farmer alone. That's why I stand so strong. Like Cliven L. Bundy. Basically, he is my hero because he taken the federal government on and the Constitution on and demanded that they honor their contracts. They've actually ran 52 people off that all were given a 100-year lease. And basically that's my hero. We need to help everybody. The government can't do everything for everybody. They need to get out of the way, is what the candidate in St. George said Monday. She says, let the people do their own thing and get the government regulations out and let us survive and have businesses that make money.